maybe I need to have In-N-Out again, but I'm pretty sure that if I had In-N-Out and Freddy's in a blind taste test, that Freddy's would come out on top. Freddy's is what In-N-Out wishes it was.
Ooh.
Hello and welcome to the Biblically Centered podcast.
Yes, it is a podcast.
Yes.
Perfect.
We have a kids podcast now, and we record though. We have those come out every single day. This one comes out once a week. So
we're used to saying Biblically Centered Kids.
Biblically Centered Kids
Podcast.
But this is not the Biblically Centered Kids podcast.
No, this is for parents.
Yes.
For those of you who are just listening and can't see, you haven't been seeing me progressively.
Well, your tummy is relatively below the table, so
that's true. But yes, we're gonna have baby number 4 anytime.
Really, anytime now.
As soon as possible for me, but
she's ready to get that baby out.
Yes.
Yeah, we're here on a cold day, enjoying my coffee in my Silver Dollar City mug, or cup, or tumbler. What do you call this?
I think they call them refillable mugs.
Refillable mugs. Well, yeah, most mugs are refillable. But yeah, a little souvenir, and it turns out it's actually a really great coffee cup. I found out months later.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
I don't know if there's any single person out there listening to this who's interested in that, but I do like Silver Dollar City for what it's worth.
Maybe someone has one in the back of their cabinet and they'll pull it out to try it out.
Growing up, for both of us, the closest kind of amusement park we had was Six Flags.
Oh, yeah.
Astro World, which no longer exists.
No.
It was a fun one, but I'm thankful that the closest one we have currently is Silver Dollar City, because I just feel like it's a slightly elevated experience from a Six Flags.
Yes. We did go in the summer, though, so we didn't get any hot chocolate, which we normally, or we have gotten at winter time.
Yeah, we'd planned on going back around Christmas time. We just never did.
Yeah.
But Silver Dollar City is a great, it's Christian themed.
Christian themed.
They have like choirs that sing Christian songs, and we saw a couple performances, and they were all somehow talked about God in them and stuff. So it's fun. And
history. There's like
history,
blacksmith,
candle making, glass blowing, blacksmith.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a fun place. So if if you're
random
near,
shout out.
Yeah. And they got good rides too.
They do.
The roller coasters are fun.
They have a new one.
They're building a new one. Actually, this mug here has Fire in the Hole on it, which was a indoor roller coaster that had been there for a
long time.
50 years or something.
But it said retiring, and then they announced at the end of this year that they're opening up a brand new one next year. So I'm sure the mug will also say Fire in the Hole next year, but themed differently.
It opened in 1972.
Oh.
So yeah, 1972, over 50 years, Fire in the Hole. But enough about that fire. What are we talking about today?
Well, first I'm going to do our mission statement.
Yeah, we should do that.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
I think so. Okay. Biblically Centered equips your family with knowledge and conversations for you to live and defend your Christian faith. And so in the kids ones, our virtues are a little different, because with those we started in order at the beginning of this year, and this podcast kind of started at the end of last year. So if you have kids doing the kids podcast, you can go back and listen to the parent one for that week.
Yeah.
But this week in ours today, we are learning about virtue Q, which says, we quickly take initiative in cleanliness and tidiness, not settling for laziness in any area.
We can go all the way back to the beginning in Genesis 1:31. Says, God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a simple verse. I'm sure a lot of us know that one. But it's just the idea that God set the stage for us to do good work, because God set the stage for Adam, but it then became Adam's responsibility to care for the stage God had set for him.
So it's similar to stewardship, which is a later virtue that we'll get to, but taking initiative, basically knowing that it's your responsibility or not, and still deciding to do it. So you are choosing to forego something else in order to complete a task or something that you notice. So trying to teach our children to care, which is hard. But it's good, obviously, a good virtue to instill in them because it will benefit them for their whole life. Mm-hmm. And one thing we've been trying to teach with our children is the quickly part, because I feel like sometimes, if you give them a whole day to do something, they never do it quickly. It's always like the last hour, the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, I learned that lesson.
And it's like, oh, well.
It's like, hey, we have life group tonight, so you guys have to have this done before we go to life group. It's like, oh, shoot, they're going to wait till the last 30 minutes.
And they did.
So it's like, we just got to give them, the time is now.
Yes. So quickly emphasizing that is what we're personally working on in our household of, nope, this is just when we do it. Let's do it.
It's kind of funny because our middle child sometimes... like one of the tasks they have to do each week is clean the basement, because we live in a area of the United States that has basements, and so ours is like they do a lot of their schooling down there. It's a big play area for them. So very quickly can it turn from clean to messy. Yes. So that's a task they have to do weekly, at least. But our middle child, it's just always a struggle to get him to pick up. I mean, it is a lot whenever it comes to pickup time. But it was funny because, he'll eventually do it, but there's usually a lot of nudging and prodding, and to put it lightly, along the way to get him to pick up. But then yesterday, randomly, my daughter came upstairs and had said that he had just picked up the whole basement, her brother. And so I came down here, and sure enough, he had, just randomly one morning on a whim. But it was because... he was trying to build like a dinosaur zoo in the basement. So he needed the basement clean so he could have all the space to build his dinosaur basement.
Honestly, whatever compels you at that point.
And then he spent the next 2 hours building a volcano out of cushions.
Yeah.
And getting his dinosaur toys and creating. He turned a Spider-Man into a pterodactyl.
Yeah.
It was pretty interesting.
Yep. And the one dinosaur was eating a triceratops. Yeah.
But... he set the stage.
He did. So yes, I think it's interesting, depending on your kids' personalities, what helps them actually want to pick up. Our daughter, if you give her a goal of, what was it? Yesterday was like Mario Party and Freddy's. If they did their big tour yesterday, and she was on it.
Yeah.
You said those words, and it was like, boom, she was doing it. Yeah, and you had to tell her to like slow down so her brothers could help.
She didn't really. They kind of got lucky because she ended up. The boys helped carry some stuff for her to clean everything else.
So yeah, she's very highly like task oriented. Honestly, Freddy's. She loves some Freddy's. Mm-hmm. It's just so good.
Freddy's is what In-N-Out wishes it was.
Oh, wow.
Gonna start that feud.
Oh, no.
I think, maybe I need to have In-N-Out again, but I'm pretty sure that if I had In-N-Out and Freddy's in a blind taste test, that Freddy's would come out on top.
You would be able to clearly know which was which anyways.
I really like In-N-Out. It's such an anomaly to me. I don't think that's the right word, but it's just because so many people love it.
Right.
And like there's burger shows like on YouTube with these like burger scholars who have like spent their whole life perfecting burgers, and they still have In-N-Out in like their top 3 burgers of all time. And then I'll have it whenever like I've never had it in California because I've never been to California except in LAX.
Right.
So people say it's better in California. I don't know. I've had it in Texas, and it's just always been just very so-so for me.
Yeah, wouldn't we rank Shake Shack above that?
Yes, I think Shake Shack's a better burger. My experience with Freddy's has been better. Freddy's has better fries.
Oh, yeah.
In-N-Out's fries are terrible, and they sit there and hand cut this is a rant I'm going to go on. They sit there and they hand cut. Like there's someone who hand cuts potatoes in and out to make a terrible product with them. Like that is such wasted labor. If they were making, because there's a way you have to cook fresh fries to get them crispy, which essentially means you essentially have to fry them twice.
Right.
You have to do like a par fry, let them sit dry, and then fry them again. And that's how they get crispy. They don't do that. They just go straight from cut to straight to oil, and then so they're always soggy. They will never be crispy unless you tell them to cook them twice as long.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, so they're just sitting there having this guy all day cutting potatoes to make a inferior product.
Correct. And I would say, anyways,
frozen vegetables are where it's at. Frozen fries are where it's at. People give frozen a hard time, but typically when it comes to vegetables,
you did work in fast casual food for 20 years. So you can take his. Yeah. You used to have people fresh squeezed lemons every day.
Typically, and they say that in terms of nutrient density, frozen vegetables will retain more nutrient density than even the vegetables you'll get at the grocery store.
Correct.
Because they freeze them pretty quickly after they're picked.
Right.
It's the same thing with fries.
Well, a lot of the fresh fruit they pick before they're ripe so that they'll be ripe at the store.
Right.
And that isn't as good for you.
There you go.
There you go.
So all that to say, don't knock places that use frozen fries because one, they're frozen quickly after they're cut.
Do you like waffle fries?
And they create a crispier product. And crispy is what we're looking for when we're getting fries, not little soggy things that you have to cover with whatever the sauce that people rave about at In-N-Out that's just a glorified Thousand Island. Anyways.
Do they do it with cleanliness and tidiness, though?
Well, that's where In-N-Out wins. Because we can get in debates about the food quality, but In-N-Out does win in the customer service, cleanliness, the whole aesthetic. Like the fact that it feels like you're in an old school restaurant with like the how simple their menu is.
And yet still modern.
But their shakes are terrible too.
Oh.
No good. Sorry. I'm not going to get on that either. So really it's just their burgers, which at best I feel like are mid. So, but their service is nice. What was your question?
I don't know. Now that you got that off your chest, I was going to say, are they cleanly and tidy so we can get back to our virtue?
They are very clean and very tidy.
Yes, they are. There you go.
But so in Colossians 3:23 through 24, it says, whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord. That's even if you're working in and out. Work as if you're working for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ.
Yes. So I think that's an important distinction to be made, that when we are working and teaching our children to work, we want to get the point across. Yes, it is for us and our house, but ultimately it is because it is our responsibility as people who follow Christ to do what is required of us. And so if maintaining your home is a requirement, as it should be, then that is part of their responsibility as living in your household. Because again, we're building towards, and ultimately we'll talk about stewardship in a later virtue, but that's part of it. Like we can't be good stewards if we can't take care of our things, and we can't do bigger things for God if we can't maintain smaller things. So I think just always realizing that in cleaning and in being tidy, we want to try to find ways to talk about what we're doing is unto the Lord. And it says, we will receive an inheritance as our reward, which is eternal life. And again, it's not based on works. But works are a byproduct of our heart turned towards God. So, yes, and that can be hard. But again, a lot of these virtues that we talk about, are there ways that you can express these out loud? So, we are taking care of our house because God has provided it to us, or God has provided, these items to us, or this or that, just to communicate that everything does come from God. And so our responsibility as Christians is to take care of those things which
Mhm.
God has given to us.
Yeah.
And I think not to be overwhelmed. I know we've found in our house that almost the fewer things we have, the better we're able to keep up with them,
Yeah.
and the better we treat them, and the easier it is for our children to actually take care of the things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a lesson there, or a angle that I think can speak to a lot of things. Like there is just something, like I know that it's a quote, it's not scripture, that says cleanliness is next to godliness, but there is an aspect of like taking a more simplistic approach. And it's not to say, we don't ever talk against like having nice things or that kind of thing, but sometimes having too much, can be more of a hindrance than it is more of a hindrance than it is a benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have found with our kids that, like I mentioned the basement earlier, we have a storage room that's attached to our basement down in the basement. And so we just kind of started moving stuff into the storage room. Maybe it's toys that just kind of get left out. They don't really get played with much or whatever. And so we've very much simplified what's out in the basement. And yet somehow it's created a more peaceful, most of the time, experience, because the basement, one, doesn't get as messy as quickly. And I just feel like when there's less options for them to choose from, they're able to enjoy the option they have better.
Yeah, they almost get like better focus.
Yeah. And I feel like that can even I don't know what the overarching lesson is there, but even like when you think about like even us as adults trying to choose something to watch, maybe a movie we want to watch.
Mm-hmm.
If we had a DVD collection of 20 movies, it'd probably be relatively easy to just choose one to watch. But when you have, Hulu and Netflix and Amazon Video and all that stuff, and you have 1,500 movies to choose from, you just sit there and it's like an hour and you can't decide what to watch.
Right. You remember growing up and being dropped off? Well, I don't think I was dropped off, but I like the Blockbuster or movie store. And it was like, these are your options.
Mm-hmm. Go to the kids section. They got like 2 shelves.
Right. And you might have watched half of them. So goes half.
Rent Ninja Turtles a lot. I don't know why my dad just never bought it for us. Never owned Ninja Turtles, but we rented them a lot.
But yeah, it was easier to make that decision because you'd be like, no, I watched that last week. Oh, okay. You watched that the other. And then you would be like, okay, we have 2 options. All right, let's do this one. Well, and we used to do that when we were first married.
Well, we used to do that when we lived.
Yeah, like
there was in
7
the town
years ago.
when we moved here. There was a Family Video that was still in existence that was walking distance from our house.
Yeah,
it's no longer there. If they eventually, bought the bullet, but bit the bullet. I don't know what phrase. Sometimes I feel like I don't understand the phrases I'm saying, but they eventually closed. But for those few years, even when our daughter was young, we would stroll her down there, pick out a couple movies. It was nice. All that to say, less is more. And I think when it comes to you assessing your home and the pinch points of messes and cleanliness and all that kind of stuff, if you do run into challenges with your kids, I just think there is an element of less being more. Not to say that not to get or have things that you consider nice, but just
well, and yes, and because like for us, it's easier to say instead of clean the basement, it's easier to say pick up the Duplos or pick up the Magnetile. We give them one item to focus on. A, then they know what they're actually picking up, and B, it lets us know who is picking up, which is always nice to know. Yeah. So anyways, just random. That's what we found works at our house. And maybe you have a different solution that is working for you. And like we said, every kid is a little different. Every house is a little different. So
I don't want to read the next verse. It's a little convicting, so you just want to skip it.
I guess I'll read it. Philippians 2:14-16. Do all things without grumbling or disputing, that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in this world, holding fast to the word of life, so that in the day of Christ I may be proud that I did not run in vain or labor in vain. Again, with all of these virtues, they are helping us be sanctified as we live our life trying to emulate Christ. We are being sanctified and working on all of these. So, yeah, do all things without grumbling or disputing. I feel like I'm still not there yet.
Yeah, me neither. But I don't know if when they wrote this verse that they knew that, we were going to have kids. They probably didn't know that.
But yeah, it says that we would be without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation. So and that's the thing that I love about Scripture. It spoke to them then. It speaks to us today. It will still be speaking to us in years to come. So a crooked and twisted generation is culturally what we are stuck in without Christ. And so we are to show, we are to be without blemish in the midst of them so that we can shine as lights in the world. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you just think about your workplace, are there people who stand out because they are doing their job well and they are, you're like, wow, they always do this project excited and they're, continually training themselves and wanting to do better. Those are the people that stand out in the workplace and who get promoted or who get recognized or who get accolade. And we don't do it because of those things. We do it because we're honorable and we want to please God. But that's a natural byproduct that we will go further in our careers or at work or in life because we are just happy to be doing what we've been given.
Yeah. And there, there's just something attractive, the people that in your life that are able to go through their work week, and even if it's not perfect, or maybe that somewhere deep down them, maybe the job they have is not the one that they ultimately want, or they're in a spot in life that's not their ideal setting, but they're still able to maintain this sense of peace and joy, and they're pleasant to be around because they kind of radiate that joy, which is deeper than their circumstances. There is something that just is attractive, and when I say attractive, I'm not meaning like physically attractive. I'm just saying like it's a person that you like being around, a friend you like spending time with, someone you like working alongside because they're just an encouragement, as opposed to the person that seems like no matter what. And I'm sure you can also think of people who maybe do have the thing that the things that you are working towards, or the situation or the money or the family that you would dream of, but yet they seem to grumble all the time. Right. And I think because the thing that we have to get our minds around is like the grumbling and all that is not a circumstance-based output. It's an internal output. So it comes from something that's going on inside of you deeply, not the circumstances. So whether you're living your best life, so to speak, or you're not in a spot you want, you can still work and do the things that are in front of you with joy and peace if you allow God to work in you that way.
Yeah. I mean, I think back, it's been a few years since I've watched Dirty Jobs, but I, A, love that show. B, they're showing people doing things that you're like, whoa, I would never, ever, ever want to do those things. And these people are just like, most of them were genuine, like excited to go to work, excited to help people. And they were like pretty not great jobs, but they took joy in what they were doing. And, right. And like you said, it's easy, I think, for us to paint this like portrait to our kids of you're going to get this job and it's going to be great and you're going to be fulfilled. And it's like, yes, we want that for our children, but also along the way, there might be circumstances and jobs that we're doing that aren't what we want to do, or that aren't the flashiest or the greatest, but they're still required and they still need to be done. And to do them well with a good attitude makes all the difference and might help them get to where they want to go quicker. It might help put them in contact with the right people. All these things that you maybe don't think about just from their attitude. that will get you recognized almost a lot more than just doing the job. So at the end of this virtue, it says, not settling for laziness in any area. And so laziness is ultimately idolatry. And so is its opposite, workaholism. And so both of these are actually forms of self-worship. Each of the virtues that we've defined have their virtue, and then they also have two vices. And I believe in our first, what we're about episode, we kind of talked about Aristotle's The Golden Mean and kind of what that means and looks like. So on opposite sides of the spectrum, you have laziness, and then you have workaholism. So just kind of, maybe stop and evaluate where on that scale you sit, depending on work or home or kids or this or that, because we don't want work to be all that our children know about us.
Yeah.
And we don't want to come across as being super negative every time we have to go to work or something as well.
Yeah, I mean, you want to display the right characteristics in front of your kids, so you don't want them to get the perspective that you're, like you said, on one end, lazy, that, whenever you're at the house, you're just kind of loafing around all day. But then you also don't want their perspective of you to be that you're a workaholic. And I think that especially in, I know that they're both tempting. I know that, for those who are maybe heavy in the social media, like obviously comparison, we've heard it our whole life that comparison is the thief of joy, and that you can be so blessed and have a great spouse, great kids, even maybe not ideal circumstances, but just a lot of blessings in your life that God has blessed you with, to make a content, happy, productive life where God has you. But you're also very inundated in social media, and so you see those people who you went to school with, or the people in your same city that just are quote unquote abounding more than what you feel like you are. And so you can start to compare and wish you had maybe a house like theirs or a car like theirs, and then suddenly, instead of being thankful for all the things that you have, you're now just wishing you had what they had. Yeah. And so sometimes that can create in people this kind of, some people just want to grind, work, grind, like all hours of the night. Like, I'm going to get home from work and I'm going to do my side hustle until 10 p.m. And then, and not to say that there's not seasons of life where you might need to put in some extra time here or there, but basically we need to create the systems for ourselves that don't allow that workaholic tendency to come in, because all that to say, you're not that important. Some people feel like the business can't function without you, yada, yada, yada. And I get that lots of jobs are different. But if your job is too demanding of you, then that just means there's not the right systems in place. Yeah. And you are not that important. Everybody is replaceable. The only time you're not replaceable is as a husband and as a father, or as a mom, as a wife. Yeah. Because no one can replace your kid's mom. No one can replace your kid's dad. So that's where you aren't replaceable. But in the workplace, and I learned that, I was a little self-important in my previous job, thinking that I had done, so much and kind of put myself in a good position and was relied on a lot. And I was, when I left, it was tough, but they had to got a new guy for my spot the next week, and they have kept on trucking. Yeah. I wasn't that important.
Well, and don't they say at the end of your life, you're never going to look back and be like, man, I should have worked more. You're probably going to be like, shoot, I worked way too much. Yeah. And not to say, obviously, like you said, there are seasons and there are times in your life where it is hard and it is difficult, and week to week there is a struggle, but we shouldn't let that become our norm. And also, to speak to something you said earlier, what's the phrase? Like, we see people's highlight reels. We don't see
their behind the scenes.
Not their behind the scenes. So you don't know how those people got there. And also, sometimes we don't know how much debt people are in. the struggle that they're going through. And so to compare ourselves to someone else is just, it doesn't benefit anyone.
Well, it's crazy because like when the Bible talks about not coveting your neighbor's wife, it's like, okay, I'm not going to covet what my neighbor has. I can understand that. But now we have access to so many people's, like essentially the social media is like our new neighborhood. And and now we have all of these people at our fingertips that we can covet. And I'm not just saying their spouse, but, whatever they have. And so
yeah, because I think it says cows too. And their servants and their cows.
Got the cows. But all that to say, it's like, and I've had this conversation with people, and I still use social media, and I feel like it's a love-hate thing, but I just sometimes get in these positions where I have these thoughts of just like, has social media done more harm than good?
Right. You're kind of more removed from people, so sometimes you find it easier to be like you said, you're never going to covet those things from your neighbors who you know, but that person over there that you have no relationship to, it's a little easier to let yourself think about those things or become jealous so
or to covet, it almost feels like a fantasy. You can create these fantasy covet heart, because it's like, yes, me coveting my neighbor's whatever he has, that's a little bit more practical. It's like, it's a little bit more tangible. But when I'm just coveting, this celebrity that I follow, their lifestyle, and I can just sit there and kind of get lost in that, you can kind of trick yourself into thinking, well, it's just a fantasy, so it's not really coveting.
Right.
But it still is not positioning your heart correctly. And so all that to say, do what you got to do, but don't let your kids have social media or smartphones.
There you go.
Because, well, it's just crazy. Like, sorry, we'll get on the smartphone tangent for just a minute.
Okay.
Because, like, think about our generation. Smartphones came out when we were already adults. I didn't get my first smartphone until after we were married.
Right. Correct.
In college. And still, it creates problems when not used appropriately, or you can allow yourself to, be spending too much time on it, that sort of thing. And we didn't get it until we were adults. And so now it's like thinking like, 8-year-olds who have smartphones. It's like they don't. I was an adult and we didn't. Of course, it was newer for us, so we didn't really know. We kind of just things kind of started coming out, before we really knew what.
I remember
what they
I had
were,
to pay for text messages like per letter.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my dad got a bill one month and was like, "Who spent?" Which it was me. I was the only other one with a phone. My parents and me. And he was just like, "You spent." I forget. It was something like $60 or something, which back then, was a lot.
Yeah.
He's like, "You spent $60 on like text messages," and I was just like, "Oh, okay. Guess I'm not going to do that anymore."
Yeah, I remember. I still have the first memory of the very first time I sent a text.
You're just.
My mom got a. What was the? It wasn't Nokia. It was a phone company that was out way back in the early days of cell phones, and it was a green logo.
Oh.
And it kind of had like a swirl in it.
Okay.
I forget the brand. That was the phone she had. Anyways, and so she could text. And I remember we went to the grocery store, but they left me in the car, and she left her phone in the car. So I pulled it out and was like, and so I texted my girlfriend at the time because I didn't have a cell phone, but I punched her number and then sent just a hello. And there
you go.
And that was it. That was my first text message.
T9. You remember doing that? Anyways, yes. Okay. So random tangent.
But the data it's not really up for a debate. Parent listening to this, like, I can be a little bit hard-nosed on this one, but it's not really up for debate. There's so much data out there that lets us know indefinitely it is detrimental for your adolescent to have a smartphone.
Yes.
No matter what. I don't care if it's so they can fit in with their friends. That's never a good choice.
Should we start some sort of, we'll just be weird together.
Yeah.
So you can blame us. We'll blame you. When our children try to ask for phones, we'll just say, sorry.
Yeah.
So-and-so's not, we're not. So there you go. We'll be your, just blame us.
And thankfully they do make phones like, because we'll probably let them have a phone when they're older that they can call us.
Right.
That sort of thing. A dumb phone, so to speak.
Yeah.
but not one that has internet access and all that.
Oh my goodness.
So.
Yeah. I'm in a tech group.
So be strong, parents. You know it's the right choice. Be strong.
There you go. Yes. Okay. I'm going to jump back into laziness.
Okay.
Laziness is sinful, but it's more so a symptom of a deeper sin issue, which is worship. And so when our affections are set somewhere besides God, then our behavior will follow those affections. So if we have affection for comfort, or we have affection for, what are some other things we've talked about? If you have affection for those things over God, then your behavior and your attitudes are going to start aligning with that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if your affections are more towards accolades at work, then your affections are probably going to start working towards workaholism. If your affections are towards comfort and just chillaxing and self-love and all of this, then you're going to tend towards laziness, comfort. And so that's why in one of our most recent ones, prioritizing our time in worship and serving, we want to make sure that we are prioritizing our time well, so that we can render our worship to the right source. Because ultimately who we worship and show time and honor to is who our kids are going to. And so it would be hypocritical of us to say that that is who we're honoring, and yet our actions are going towards other things. Mm-hmm. So, which again, we say all of this not to we're literally saying this to ourselves as well. Every episode, because again, we do believe that these are helping us to become more sanctified. And so the next time when we talk about this, there will still be things that we're still having to work on. And I think that's the beauty of Christianity, is that it's not a one and done. I did it, I'm now right, I can check that off. It's no, I need to continually be washed and made clean, and trying to find joy in that process. Yeah. I feel like we hit a lot, and I feel like this is maybe one virtue that I don't know if I personally think about often. I mean, I think about working and that kind of thing, but I don't think about it in this context, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And why are we calling our children to clean? I think those kind of things is, it's just important to think about why we're having them do it, why we do it, just to glorify God in literally everything we do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the prayer. So.
All right. Well, thank you for listening. Please check out, if you have children, our Biblically Centered Kids podcast.
Daily podcasts. Short episodes, 5 to 10 minutes.
Yep.
Fun topics. We go over our virtues. We do New Testament stories, Old Testament stories, quizzes, games, draw-alongs, jokes. Little fun like history tidbits we'll do at the beginning of some episodes. Little factoids just about the world around us that are kind of fun. So it's educational, it's uplifting, it's encouraging. There's scripture. So hopefully it's something that your kids can find some joy in, and that you can trust that they can listen to this.
Well, and we're trying to help with these virtues in our own life. We're trying to help make them practical, A, to us, B, to our children. And so, yeah, we try to find ways to make things practical or remind our children of these virtues so they can practice them on their own. Mm-hmm. So, all right.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye.